I drove out to Oklahoma, expecting silence. The kind you only find on a farm, wind in the corn stalks, cattle lowing somewhere in the distance, the creak of a weathered barn door. That's what I came for. Peace. Instead, I got bulldozers roaring and survey trucks beeping in reverse. My boots sank into fresh tire, ruts carved deep into the pasture. Bright orange stakes stab at the earth like someone had started a giant board game across my land. And there she was, Linda Harris, HOA president, arms crossed, sunglasses flashing like she was about to unveil the eighth wonder of the world. Behind her, crews spray-painted long, perfect white lines right across my cornfield. I almost laughed. What was next? Direct flights to Dallas from behind my barn. That's when it hit me. This wasn't another HOA improvement project. This was a runway on my land, and Linda Harris had no idea who she was messing with. When I pulled up to the old farmhouse, part of me thought I had the wrong place. My dad's faded name still clung to the mailbox. The tin rooster we'd nailed to the fence 20 years ago still leaned in the breeze, and the barn sagged just a little more to the left. But the air wasn't calm. It was buzzing, busy, wrong. I came here for one thing: rest, running the Federal Aviation Administration in Washington, D.C. Doesn't leave much room for naps under oak trees. By summer, I was burnt out. Late-night calls, emergency orders, hearings before Congress. I figured I'd earn a week of fishing and homegrown tomatoes. Instead, I drove straight into a construction zone no one told me about. At first, I thought maybe the county was patching the road. Oklahoma soil has a habit of cracking asphalt wide open. But when I saw cones and stakes inside my pasture, right beside the cattle pen, I knew this wasn't county work. It was HOA work, the worst kind. I leaned against my truck, watching workers in neon vests hammer stakes into the dirt like they were planting a flag on the moon. They barely noticed me. Clipboard guy nodded like he was sketching blueprints for the Pentagon. Then I heard the voice I dreaded. Linda Harris. If arrogance had a ringtone, it would sound exactly like her. Well, look who finally showed up to his little farm, she called, strutting over. We've been making improvements while you were away. Improvements? I echoed. Funny, I don't recall asking for them. She lowered her sunglasses just enough to hit me with that smug glare. John, progress doesn't wait for anyone. This community is moving forward. If you want to stay stuck in the past, fine, but don't get in our way. Her words barely registered. My focus was on the stakes. Perfect spacing, dead straight, aligned with the prevailing wind. My professional instinct screamed louder than her speech. But I kept my poker face. Progress, huh? I said casually. What are we talking? Bigger pool? New playground? She laughed, sharp and mocking. Oh, you'll see. Let's just say this neighborhood is about to become a very exclusive community. Then she turned, barking orders like a field general, manicured hands slicing through the air. By dusk, I tried convincing myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was a road, a bike trail, but I knew better. HOAs never stop at bike trails when they can chase something bigger, louder, and twice as ridiculous. Later that day, I stopped by the general store, where news travels faster than tornado sirens. Old man Jenkins was behind the counter, toothpick in his mouth, eyes peeking over the newspaper. Back in town, huh? He said. Yeah, thought I'd find some peace and quiet. He chuckled, not with Linda around. That laugh told me everything. The whole town already knew. What's she building? I asked. Jenkins leaned back. Rumor is she's been bragging about turning this place into one of those fly-in communities. Like in Florida, folks land their private planes right by their houses. I blinked. She's building an airstrip? I'm telling you, he said slowly, if you want quiet, you picked the wrong farm. His words chased me all the way back. Private planes. Runway. Flying community. It made perfect sense now. Linda wasn't flexing HOA power. She was trying to turn my father's land into her own airport. That evening, I walked the property myself. Survey lines cut across pasture and pond, ending neatly at the tree line. 3,000 feet, plenty for small aircraft, perfect orientation for the wind, perfectly illegal. I stood at dusk listening to crickets, bulldozers, and the weight of my father's legacy. He survived droughts and tornadoes, but I doubted he ever imagined a homeowners association would try to turn his crops into an airstrip. I made myself a promise right then. Linda wanted to play pilot? Fine. But this flight was going to crash. Hard. What Linda didn't know, what no one knew, was that she had declared war on the wrong man. Because I wasn't just John Miller, farmer. I was John Miller, director of the FAA. And every inch of that runway was mine to shut down. Linda's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Glad you could join us, John. We were just discussing our community's bright new future. I sank into back row, arms crossed. Funny, I said. I thought the future of my farm might include me. A ripple of awkward laughter rolled through the room. Not friendly, more like the kind people force when they're scared to pick sides. Linda raised her hand, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. No one is excluding you. We're simply moving forward with what the majority has decided. Progress requires vision, sacrifice, and leadership. I leaned forward. Leadership is one thing. Bulldozing federal property without permission is another. That got people shifting in their seats. Linda didn't miss a beat. She dropped a stack of papers onto the podium like a Vegas dealer. The community voted 73% in favor of developing the airstrip. The numbers don't lie. The numbers don't own my land. I shot back. A retiree in the front row snorted, drenched in cologne and ignorance. If you don't like it, sell. Someone else will appreciate the vision. Vision. The word bounced around the room like a bat-hymn. Linda probably whispered it to herself before bed, dreaming of jets descending into her little kingdom, while HOA bylaws flapped like flags in the wind. I pulled the deed from my jacket and held it high. This isn't just paper. This is proof my father bought this land long before you built your vinyl fences. You don't get to vote your way onto my property. Silence. For one delicious moment, I thought maybe I'd gotten through. Then Linda smiled. That smile, the one that makes you check both your wallet and your sanity. John, we appreciate your sentimentality, but the world doesn't stop for nostalgia. This airstrip will benefit everyone. Higher property values, more prestige. You should be thanking us. I laughed bitterly. Prestige? You're pouring asphalt across a cornfield. That's not prestige, it's lunacy. Half the room chuckled. A few even clapped. Linda slammed her hand on the podium. Enough. This project is happening. And if you don't cooperate, we'll fine you for every obstruction, every delay, every violation you cause. The HOA has authority, Mr. Miller, and you will respect it. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so everyone still heard. Linda, you might bully people into repainting mailboxes, but when it comes to airspace and runways, you're not in charge. Not even close. For the first time, her eyes flickered with doubt. Is that a threat? No, I said, smiling coldly. That's a fact. The room buzzed with whispers. Linda pounded her gavel like a judge desperate to end trial. Meeting adjourned. Chairs scraped. People shuffled out, whispering louder. Some avoided my eyes. Others gave the slightest nod, neighbors too scared to speak up, but silently cheering me on. I lingered. She finally looked up, face tight. You're making a mistake, John. The runway will be built. The community wants it. You can't stop us. I slipped the deed back into my jacket. We'll see. And I walked out, leaving her fuming behind her podium. The harassment started the next day. A letter under my door, notice of violation. I was obstructing progress by leaving farm equipment too close to development site. Translation, my tractor was in my own field. I crumpled the paper and tossed in the trash. Obstruction? Lady, that's called farming. By morning, the bulldozers were back, roaring louder than Sunday church bells. At 6 a.m., they rattled the barn windows, stirred dust into my coffee, and spooked the cattle so bad they stampeded to the far fence. Linda strutted into view, heels clicking on gravel like she was on a catwalk. Beautiful, isn't it? Progress in motion. I raised my mug. My cows call a nervous breakdown. She clapped her hands at the workers. Faster. We're on schedule. Schedule. She had a timeline. She was racing to finish before anyone could stop her. Another letter. Another fine, $500 for failure to comply with development guidelines. On my own land, I laughed so hard I nearly ripped it in half. But Linda didn't stop at letters. She turned it into theater. Every afternoon, she'd slow roll past in her shiny SUV, window down just enough to smirk. Still resisting, John? Like it was a game. One evening, I found a brand new sign hammered into my pasture. Future HOA Runway, private use only, opening soon. I ripped it out of the ground and tossed it into my truck bed, but the words branded themselves into my brain. She wasn't bluffing anymore. She was advertising. That night, I sat at my father's old kitchen table. Papers, deeds, photos, copies of every violation letter. The farmhouse smelled of stale coffee and anger. I could almost hear Dad's voice. Millerland is Millerland. Son, don't let them push you. And I wasn't just a son anymore. I was director of the FAA. Linda was practically writing me a playbook for her own destruction. Still, I held back, because sometimes the sweetest victory comes from letting your enemy dig their own grave. By week's end, sleep was a luxury. Between the bulldozers, the fines, and Linda's smug face popping up like a bad ad, I was running on black coffee in spite. Neighbors started dividing, some furious about the dust and noise, others enchanted by Linda's fantasy. Cocktails on porches, jets landing like clockwork. But in Linda's version of the story, I was the villain. You'll be remembered as the stubborn old man who killed progress, she sneered one afternoon, blocking me with her clipboard like it was a sword. I leaned close, smiling just enough to make her flinch. Or maybe they'll remember you as the woman who tried to build a runway on the wrong man's land. She faltered, just for a second, then snapped back. You'll regret this. I chuckled. Linda, I'm already having the time of my life. That night, I stood under the stars, staring at the half-built strip slicing across my pasture. To her, it looked like progress. To me, it looked like a trap. And Linda Harris was sprinting straight into it, because she didn't just trespass on my land. She trespassed into my jurisdiction. The jurisdiction of John Miller, director of the Federal Aviation Administration. And soon, I'd remind her exactly what that meant. I nearly spit coffee across the keyboard. Linda had actually tried to go through official FAA channels, without realizing her request landed right on my desk. Her application was laughable. No environmental study, no safety assessment, no community consultation. Just a half-baked manifesto about prestige typed like a high school essay. I clicked deny with the kind of satisfaction you only get once a decade. And I didn't tell a soul. Not yet. Because watching Linda strut around with her clipboard army while I held her fate in my hands, that was better than sleep. The next day, she cornered me by the barn. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she said, lips tight. If you cooperate, I might even name a hangar after you. I grinned. The John Miller Terminal. Sounds like a place where dreams go to die. Her frown deepened. Mark my words, John. This runway is happening. I leaned close enough for her to smell the coffee on my breath. Mark mine, Linda. Nothing takes off in this country without me knowing about it. She blinked, confused, then forced a laugh. You think you can stop progress with paperwork? No, I said flatly. I can stop it with the law. That crack in her armor, tiny but there, was all I needed. That night, I started building my case. Photos of the bulldozers. Videos of dust storms ripping through the pasture. Testimonies from neighbors whose windows rattled like storm shutters. Every file went into a folder labeled HOA Runway, Illegal Development. Then I picked up the phone. Listen, I told an old friend in D.C. who owed me a favor. I've got a rogue HOA trying to build an unapproved airstrip on private land. They're about a week from pouring asphalt. I need a cease and desist ready. He laughed. You're kidding. I wish I was. All right, drafting it. Just say the word. For the first time in weeks, I leaned back and breathed easy. It wasn't just me versus Linda anymore. It was Linda versus the federal government. And spoiler, the government wins every time. The next morning, I walked the site with my camera. Workers stared, whispering under their hard hats. Word spreads fast in small towns. Isn't he FAA? Doesn't he work for the government? Linda tried to smother the rumors with bravado, rolling up in her SUV, sunglasses on. "Hope you're enjoying the show," she shouted. I smiled, snapping another photo. Front row seat. Because the truth was simple. They thought they were building a runway. But really, they were building a case file. I went to work. Trail cams hidden along the fence. Hours of footage. Bulldozers tearing through pasture, trucks hauling gravel, workers pounding private airstrip signs into my land. Then came the witness statements. Mrs. Thompson, a widow down the road, signed first. "My windows rattled so hard I thought a tornado was coming," she muttered, pen scratching on the page. Then Mark, a young father. "My kids wake up at 2 a.m. from the noise. I didn't move to the country to raise them next to an airport." He slapped his signature down like he was slapping Linda herself. By the time I was done, my file was thick enough to make any prosecutor grin. Meanwhile, Linda was busy rehearsing her coronation. Meetings at the construction site. Investors in tow. Promises spilling out of her mouth like champagne foam. "In 2 weeks," she boasted, "this will be the premier flying community in Oklahoma. People will be begging to buy lots." Lots. She was already selling dirt she didn't legally own. Perfect. The next HOA gathering, I slid my phone into my shirt pocket, recording. Linda strutted on stage in a white blazer, microphone squealing. "Our HOA airstrip will be operational by the end of this month," she declared. "Membership fees will cover maintenance, and exclusive landing rights will make us the envy of the state." The crowd clapped. I smiled. Every word now evidence. Later, I tailed her convoy of trucks back to their staging yard. Behind the clubhouse, I found a stack of membership contracts. $10, 000 down for priority hangar space. A straight-up scam. I photographed everything. Still, timing was everything. Shut her down too early, and she'd spin it as government overreach. No, I wanted her to go big, make it public, make it loud. And she did. One morning, glossy flyers landed in every mailbox. Grand opening, HOA private runway, ribbon cutting, champagne reception, live demonstration flight. The audacity nearly knocked me over. Linda wasn't hiding anymore. She was throwing herself a parade. I stapled the flyer to my case file and made one last call to Washington. She's hosting an opening. I'll need the cease and desist order in hand next week. "You're really going to let her throw a party before you shut it down?" My contact chuckled. "Oh, absolutely," I said. "The bigger the stage, the harder the fall." Opening day came hot and sticky, Oklahoma heat clinging like glue. SUVs lined the road to the half-finished strip. Banners flapped. Folding chairs faced a red ribbon stretched across blackened asphalt. Champagne flutes sweated in the sun. Investors fanned themselves with glossy brochures, dreaming of prestige. And then Linda appeared, white blazer gleaming, sunglasses reflecting the crowd. A banner behind her read, "HOA Private Runway, Opening Day." "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice a blend of charm and command, "today marks a new chapter. We are pioneers, visionaries, leaders in progress. Imagine the prestige of living in a flying community. Today, we join the ranks of the elite." Glasses clinked. Cameras flashed. She gestured to the sky. "And now, to christen our runway, our first demonstration flight." A twin-engine plane dipped its wings overhead, lining up for approach. The crowd cheered, breathless. That was my cue. I stepped forward, boots crunching gravel, brim of my cap shading my eyes. At first, no one noticed. Then whispers spread, faces turned. By the time I reached the ribbon, the whole crowd was watching. "Linda," I called, voice steady, "you might want to hold off on the champagne." She blinked. "John, this isn't the time." "Actually," I interrupted, pulling the badge from my pocket and holding it high, "it's the perfect time." Gasps rippled. Camera zoomed. The FAA emblem gleamed in the sun. "My name is John Miller," I said, loud enough for the circling plane to hear. "I am the director of the Federal Aviation Administration, and as of this moment, this runway is officially shut down." Silence, heavy as thunder. Then the chaos erupted. Neighbors gasped, some whispering. I knew it. Others stared at Linda, as if she'd just tried to sell them swampland. Her face flushed the color of the asphalt beneath her heels. You can't do this," she stammered, her microphone squealing. I smiled, calm as a Sunday preacher. "Linda, I'm literally the only person who can." Above us, the plane dipped lower, lining up with the strip. I raised my hand, signaling the sheriff's deputies I'd briefed earlier. They waved their markers, radios crackling. The pilot banked hard, engines roaring, and the plane climbed back into the sky. The crowd gasped again. Some covered their ears. Others shielded their eyes from the sudden blast of wind. To me, that aborted landing was sweeter than any symphony. Linda dropped her microphone, scrambling to save face. This is a misunderstanding. We have approvals. We have investors. This is progress." I stepped closer, my voice steady, almost kind. "No, Linda, this is illegal construction, federal violation, and fraud. And it ends today." Deputies moved in, snapping photos, confiscating paperwork. Cameramen from the local news captured every second. Linda's trembling hands, the ripped ribbon, the abandoned champagne flute sweating in the sun. Neighbors started clapping. First a few, then a dozen, until the applause swelled into thunder. I stood there, badge in hand, watching Linda's empire collapse in front of her investors, her neighbors, her own workers. And honestly, it was better than coffee. The chaos began as soon as the clapping faded. Investors stormed toward Linda, waving contract in her face. Reporters shoved microphones at her, shouting questions. "Did you know this project was illegal? How much money did you take from residents?" Her composure cracked. She yanked off her sunglasses, eyes darting like a cornered animal. "This is all a misunderstanding. We filed the paperwork." I stepped beside her, holding up my FAA badge so the cameras could see it. "Correction. You attempted to file paperwork. It was denied. By me." The crowd rippled with gasps. Neighbors who'd been skeptical now looked at me with wide eyes. He's the guy in charge." Linda froze, color draining from her face. For the first time in weeks, she was speechless. I turned to crowd. "This so-called runway violates federal aviation regulations, environmental standards, and basic property rights. It is unsafe, unauthorized, and illegal. As of today, it's officially shut down." The deputies handed me the stamped cease and desist order. I unfolded it slowly, deliberately, letting the cameras catch every word, then passed a copy to Linda. Her lips moved silently as she read. "Effective immediately, prohibited, fines, demolition orders, criminal charges." The paper slipped from her fingers, fluttering to ground like a white flag. The crowd erupted again, cheers, laughter, relief. "John, please," she whispered suddenly, her voice breaking. "We can work something out. This community needs this project." I cut her off with a smirk. "The only thing this community needs is peace and quiet. Maybe a good night's sleep, without bulldozers rattling their windows." Laughter rolled through the crowd. Even the deputies cracked smiles. But I wasn't done. I turned to the investors. "For those misled, any contracts promising hangar space or runway access are null and void. You may wish to consult your attorneys." Faces darkened. One man jabbed a finger at Linda. "You told us this was approved." She backed away. I thought it was exaggerating." I raised a brow. "Linda, you've been selling membership for a runway that doesn't legally exist. That's not exaggeration. That's fraud." The sheriff stepped forward. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us for questioning." This gasp wasn't shock. It was satisfaction. Years of pent-up resentment spilled out. "About time," someone shouted. "She's been pocketing HOA fees for years," another yelled. Linda spun in desperation. "No, you don't understand. This was for all of us. For progress." I shook my head. No, Linda. It was for your ego. And it's over. Deputies escorted her toward her SUV. Cameras rolling. Excuses sputtering. By morning, she'd be plastered across every local news channel. Maybe national ones too. I turned back to the neighbors. I know the past weeks have been loud, frustrating, even frightening. But I promise you this, the runway is finished. Not in the way Linda dreamed, but in the way the law demands. The FAA exists to keep our skies safe, and that includes stopping reckless projects like this. The applause this time was different. Louder, sustained, relieved. People clapped me on the back, shook my hand. Kids smiled, knowing a villain had just been toppled. I bent down, picked up Linda's abandoned champagne glass, and raised it to peace and quiet. The crowd laughed and cheered. For the first time since I'd returned to the farm, I felt the tension lift. The runway was dead, the scam exposed. Linda Harris, queen of the HOA, dethroned in spectacular fashion. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Lawsuits, fines, and cleanup still lay ahead. Yet as the sun dipped low over the patched earth, I let myself smile. Justice had landed exactly where it belonged. The following days sealed her fate. Local news replayed her meltdown on a loop. By noon, the clip had gone viral. Memes dubbing her project Runway, more like Runaway. At the emergency HOA meeting, members aired grievances she'd buried for years. Misused fees, bogus fines, personal vendettas. The board voted her out unanimously. The FAA piled on charges. Unauthorized construction, environmental violations, fraud. Each came with fines that could sink a corporation, let alone a suburban HOA. Within a week, demolition crews tore up the half-laid asphalt. The land healed, though faint black scars remained, a ghost of Linda's failed dream. Neighbors stopped by with pies, fence-mending offers, even compliments from Old Man Jenkins, who grunted, "'Bout time someone clipped Linda's wings." I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it was right. No one, not even the most arrogant HOA president in Oklahoma, gets to bulldoze their neighbors' lives. One evening, sitting on the porch with my dog, I chuckled. All I wanted was a week off. Instead, I shut down the shortest-lived airport in America. He wagged his tail. Maybe he got the joke. Life settled again. Quiet nights, cattle grazing, cicadas buzzing. Every plane overhead reminded me of Linda, still fuming somewhere, convinced she was robbed of her legacy. But truth was simple. The only thing that ever took off was her arrogance, and it crash-landed faster than she could say progress. My father used to say, "The land remembers. It knows who respects it and who abuses it." To anyone watching, if you've ever dealt with a bully, an HOA president, a boss, a neighbor, remember this. You don't have to shout the loudest. Patience, preparation, and truth are the sharpest weapons you'll ever carry. So tell me in the comments, have you ever faced someone like Linda Harris? How did you handle it? And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe. Trust me, plenty more HOA dramas are coming in for a landing.